Good morning, church family. My name is Ray. I am the associate minister at First Christian Church of Clemmons. I want to share some thoughts with you today about one of the greatest Old Testament writers there has been. He's normally ranked second among those great Testament writers. His ministry began in the 6th century and ended around the 1st century BC during the year of King Josiah's reign. Now, just a few bullet points about this gentleman that I want to speak with you of this morning. He was inclined to bouts of melancholy, depression, had a tender heart, was shy, but he was never afraid to speak his mind. He was utterly possessed with conviction and bold and courageous, declaring the message from the Lord. He was devoutly religious, and this made him quite unpopular in his time. It subjected him to extreme persecution, suffering, and by his peers, by his friends, and ultimately by even his family. His ministry extended far beyond his own native land, but he was never sparing in his convictions to spread the truth of the gospel of the Lord. He stands out among all the other prophets in that this: Yahweh called him specifically. He was utterly stressed and distressed by the disobedience of Judah, by the evil that he saw in his land, and he was greatly pained by the lack of reverence that the people of God showed. He was known as the weeping prophet. His name is Jeremiah. It was at the time that the northern kingdom, Judah, was carried into captivity. They stood alone against their enemies. And it was at this time as well that King Josiah, who reigned during the time of Jeremiah's ministry, began to bring about religious reforms within Judah, within the country. You see, the book of the law had been found in the temple, and the priests were beginning to understand how far they had actually strayed from the ways of God. Now, isn't it a sad measure of events to know that God's word had literally been lost to the people? Dear God, I'm afraid that in so many ways that we have strayed far as well. Your good book has been set aside. We don't pray in the public like we should. We don't pray in schools, and we've made you second in our lives. But Jeremiah lived to see all of these things take place. He also lived to see Jerusalem and the temple utterly destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, and Judah being led away in captivity as slaves. Now, at this time, the world powers were Assyria and Egypt. And Jeremiah saw them reign supreme in the world. Jeremiah also saw them utterly defeated by Babylon. Babylon began to be that world power. He also foretold that Babylon would fall to a much greater power, and righteousness and peace would take place over that tyranny and reign for eternity. You know, if you think about Jeremiah, it would be easy to see an older man, maybe white hair. But most scholars believe that he was at the age of 14, maybe 15. But more than likely no older than the age of 20 when the Lord called him to this great task. The Lord reminded him in Jeremiah chapter 1 not to be afraid of the people. Don't be afraid of them, even though they will seem and appear to be your enemies. For I am the one who has touched your mouth. I have given you the words to speak, and I will protect you from those who would choose to pluck you up and break you down and try to overthrow and destroy you. God's saying to this young prophet, Jeremiah, I created you. I've got your back. I'm going to hold you and lead you with my righteous right hand. You're my son, and I'm your father. And I will protect you. I will give you those words, and you will be allowed to see these things through if you remain in obedience to my will. The Lord declared that there were days coming when he would fulfill the promises also through Judah, that a time of peace and righteousness would be restored. And this is what we call a period of hope, where Jeremiah writes, beginning in verse 29, that the nation of Israel and Judah would have a hope and a future before the Lord if they return to him. Now, the power of the call from the Lord is an amazing thing. And so I really want to focus. I really want to focus deep, best I can over the next few weeks on the man, Jeremiah. Now, there's so much prophecy in this book, so many things that are foretold and possibly even things that we're experiencing now. But I want to focus on the man, the godly man that sought to do the will of God at all costs. Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5, the Lord speaks to him. It says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were created, before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you to be a prophet to the nations." Here's the thing. The Lord called Jeremiah outside of time. My point being is this. Before he was ever thought of, he was ordained by God to be a prophet to the nations. And I thank the good Lord that this young man was not aborted. He says, "I have ordained you. I have put a call on your heart. I have put the words in your mouth." And Jeremiah, because of this, existed in the mind and in the plan of God long before he was ever in his mother's womb. You know, we could rest a long period into this next subject of there's been 61 million abortions and counting in this world since it was, or in this country since it was made legal. And that is, in my mind, without question, one of the greatest social tragedies that this country has ever seen in our history. Have you ever thought about this? The next Billy Graham, D.L. Moody, Charles Spurgeon, may have been aborted from their mother's womb if they had not sought the will of God. Maybe a great composer of Christian music or a scientist that could possibly cure cancer would have been aborted. Now, I believe the point to us here is that we're not supposed to be the one making decisions on life and death. That's God's privilege. Life begins the very minute of conception. God put our DNA together. He put our structure together, and He preordained a plan for Jeremiah, and He has preordained a plan for you as well. And while I do believe that abortion is one of our greatest social tragedies, I believe even more so that God is a God who forgives, and God is a God who will be more than willing to use our scars to help others and in turn heal us of our scars as well if we align our will with His, just as the prophet Jeremiah did. Now, God told Jeremiah to dress for work. He said, "Do all of these things that I've commanded you to do. Don't be dismayed before man. Behold, there is a day when I will make you a fortified city, an iron pillar with bronze walls to stand against the entire land, and against the kings of Judah, its officials, and its priests, and its people. They will fight for you. They will fight against you, but they will not prevail. For I, the Lord, am with you." See, here's our amazing point. There's a lot of things that we might not feel comfortable with in this life, things that we might not feel comfortable to speak. But I want you to bear in mind something. If the Lord has put it on your heart, you must speak that truth. And while we must speak it with gentleness and love, we must speak that truth, because God has never desired for us to be a pew warmer, not one time. Jeremiah had many troubling sermons for a stubborn people. He had to preach as an unwelcomed man before a stubborn, arrogant crowd. And even worse, preach a message that no one wanted to hear. And I believe for this is the reason why he was called the weeping prophet. Now, the Lord told Jeremiah to never take a wife or a child. And I believe we get into some of the reasons why here. They would have constantly been in danger, and the Lord didn't want that. This also allowed Jeremiah to stay closer to the Lord, to not be sidetracked by other things around him, to focus on God wholly and fully and seek His plan and purpose for his life. This allowed him to be closer with the Lord. to pray more often than not when no one else was around to get him sidetracked or anything of this nature. And I believe for this is why he was called the weeping prophet. A man broken over the pride and self-indulgence and idol worship of his nation. And he prayed to the Lord constantly that his nation would repent. Now, do you know someone who has been in the throes of being against the will of God, or maybe who is not a believer? I'm sure that you do. I'm going to press upon your heart right now. Today's that day to reach out to them, but reach out to them in love and humility and share with them what the good Lord has done in your life. Give an account for the good things that God has done and what he will continue to do in your life and in their life as well, if they receive Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. We're supposed to give an account to them, and the Lord commanded Jeremiah to do the same as well. He also wanted to remind the nation of Judah that they had turned away from their first love. Jeremiah 2:2 says, the Lord says, I remember the devotion of your youth, your love as a bride, how you followed me into the wilderness in a land that was not sown. Jeremiah wants to describe to the people of Israel what the Lord thinks of them, and it's an unfaithful wife. Israel at once loved the Lord with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength, and now they were a people who had breached that relationship with the Lord and turned away from him. But God had not forgotten them or turned away from them. Let me give you a quick example. I read a story one time of a woman riding in a truck with her husband. She said, I remember when we were first married. I sat right next to you on the seat in this very truck. However, I'm now sitting on the other side of this seat up against my door. The husband looked at his wife and said, my dear bride, I'm not the one who was moved, but it is you. The very same thing had happened to Judah. They had turned away from the sweetness of engagement. It is almost as if the first year of marriage had passed and the honeymoon was over. They had grown apart. But God was not the one who had moved. You know, it can be easy to step away from our first love, that being the Lord. But God is always constant, and he's always seeking us. When we stumble and fall, he's right there waiting with open arms to bring us back. The Lord also wanted Israel to understand that they were as broken cisterns, those vases that would hold water. For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and they have hewn for themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. Jeremiah 2:13. God is saying to the people of Judah, you have forsaken this cool, pure, clear stream for leaking vessels that cannot hold water, and when they do, it turns sour. A water that can't be used for anything because it now has a brackish, nasty taste. And it also stains whatever it comes in contact with. They had become useless to God. I pray, dear Lord, that we're not the same. Look around and see the world today with all of the tragedies and depravity that are taking place. Many have exchanged God's truth for a worldly lie. Idol worship has become at an all-time high, I believe, probably even more than it was in the days of Jeremiah. We can worship our homes, cars, toys, jobs, computers, video games. We can even set our marriage up as an idol. Let me give you a hint. Whatever you think about more than God, that's your idol. So be careful. We must answer the call that the Lord has put on our hearts. Never be fearful to proclaim what the Lord has done for us to others. We must do what we can to make sure all have heard the good news and the gospel of Jesus Christ. Otherwise, we're allowing those people to fall into captivity just as those from Judah did to Babylon. Slaves to sin. And they'll die a cruel death of destruction as captives. If they never hear that gospel truth, then they will never have an opportunity to know. And so it's up to us. It's up to you. So I ask, will you recognize that call, that power of that call that the Lord has put on your heart, just as on the heart of Jeremiah? You don't have to be a prophet. You don't have to be a missionary, but you do have to proclaim the name and the fame of the Lord Jesus Christ. And that starts today. After all, He has known you long before you were born, and He has ordained you. So I challenge you today. Remember the words of Jeremiah. Remember the way that he sought after the Lord with all of his heart, soul, mind, and strength. And even though he was a tender man, he was never afraid to speak the truth of God. If you have any questions about what we've spoken of today, please feel free to reach out to me at Ray, firstchristianclemmons.com. We would love to see you here on Sunday mornings. Our Sunday school time is at 9:15. And our worship time begins at 10:30 and ends at 11:30. We would love to have you come join us. Have a blessed day.